Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa is slamming the troubled power utility. The union says Eskom is becoming increasingly unreliable with the ongoing power cuts. GIWUSA has learned that in some villages, blackouts last for up to 12 hours. Shocking, isn't it? Now, this translates to stage 8 power cuts, contrary to what the utility has been telling us. The union says 2023 is certain to be far worse than 2022. For more on this, we're joined by GIWUSA's president, Mametlwa Sebei. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Sebei, here on eNCA. Just firstly, we did see a lot of people suggest that at some point last week we were no longer on stage 6, we were on 7 or 8. What kind of evidence have you gathered to say that this is actually a fact?
We are getting reports from our members who reside mainly in rural areas, but also working class black townships. And I think the evidence suggests that the blackouts have become certainly more severe. In the past, now unlike in the past, they often affect the entire municipalities for much longer hours than initially is is customary. Then it's customary for this level of load shedding, but also with more intense regularity, when not only do we have a repeated load sheddings during the day, but also where you're told that it is supposed to take about 2-4 hours is extended. In some rural areas of Limpopo, for instance, in Sekhukhune and Begasfort area, we are told, of load shedding that went way beyond 12 hours. Of course, there are issues of mechanical problems that are also in the mix, but I think the issue here is that there is general crisis and it's much deeper than Eskom is willing to admit.
All right. So in terms of what's happening, particularly in rural areas, you say, do you think it's because of, the view that our government has turned their backs on rural areas and therefore they then, have to be forced to go through 12 hours of load shedding while the rest of the country is likely going through 6 or 8 hours?
Absolutely, because, it is not just problem of generation, I think, which aggravate the situation, but also the transmission infrastructure itself. Because it appears, in areas, for instance, of Begasfort, where we spoke to some of the community activists there, that it has to do with transmission problem. But this, for Eskom, is very convenient because it does contribute to load shedding. And in fact, they do now have a policy called load reduction, where they target a very poor, mainly black working class communities, profiled on a basis that they are not likely to pay. And the pretext is that they are curtailing illegal connections and illegal usages. And on the basis of that policy, they punish the entire townships for a handful of people that may have connected themselves to the grid illegally, and that's because obviously of unaffordable tariffs that are forcing people more and more on the black market. But the situation is generally becoming worse. But also the evidence from Eskom itself, when that Eskom is not being entirely honest. Look at it this way. On the 24th of February, that is a few days ago, right? There was a load shedding of about 5,434 megawatts. That was stage 6. Now, 2 days and 92, megawatts of electricity. Now, stages varies on the basis of, in a situation where you have over 1,500 difference in the load shedding or megawatts of load shedding, it does tell you that you can't be on the same stage. We were on stage 8 by all indications, and this is verified or rather confirmed by this data from Eskom itself, but also in many ways it validates experiences of many working class communities, especially black urban townships and of course rural areas as well as of course many farmers that are giving accounts of the same prolonged but also intensely regular and repeated blackouts.
Now, Mr. Sebei, I want to go back to the debt that you were talking about. It's all a ripple effect, right? Because once, people cannot pay municipalities then cannot pay Eskom, and then Eskom has to apply for a bailout, which means, the few South Africans who are able to then have to bail out Eskom anyway at the end of the day. Now, last week, or the week before rather, the finance minister did announce that about 254 billion rand would go towards Eskom's 400 billion rand debt. What's your reaction to that? Are you not happy about government giving them the bailouts, even though they had no choice?
Well, firstly, we think that great majority of that debt is an odious debt. Firstly, again, this approach confirmed the approach of the ANC, that where it was supposed to be bailing out millions of ordinary working class and middle class people in this country, they decided to bail out, a big, banking lenders and cooperate companies in construction that basically are swindling Eskom, that basically were responsible for the mess that today we have in Kusile and Medupi, which, as we are speaking now, is malfunctioning, of course, underperforming by 3,000 megawatts that we desperately need in order to overcome this crisis of load shedding. Now, we know what most of this debt is to. What? IMF, big banking companies, but also the very construction companies that did a terrible job. 15 years later, right? And with stations that overran by over 300 billion in initial cost. These are the people that we are supposed to be paying. The result of which is that we have spent, if you like, about 700 billion trying to maintain capacity, trying to grow capacity at Eskom. Today we are, of course, 25 less than the capacity we had in 2005, in 2007, but also we are 800% increase in terms of tariffs for which I and you and ordinary working class people in this country are paying. That we think is outrageous, and those are people that must be held responsible, including the coal miners that are swindling Eskom.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can sense that you're quite upset, and I'm sure a lot of South Africans do agree with you on that regard. Mametlwa Sebei, he's the president of GIWUSA.